Right, so we've got a new project for May, so start of a new month, which is, I'm calling it sort of inspired by the masters. So it could be the modern masters, the old masters, or if you wanted some contemporary artists, it's basically looking at somebody else's work and getting something out of it, really. So it could be, so there's different ways you could tackle this. I'll do a little bit of a demo in a minute using this one. So this is more like a kind of straightforward copy, which is when I went to art school many moons ago, that was one of the methods that I used really to learn and to teach. And certainly artists like Van Gogh, really his whole art education was just copying from books and copying other people's work. And he did that for quite a few years, and then that was how he learned really. And so it's a very traditional way of of learning and of developing skills. One of the great things about copying is that it's a bit like drawing anything. It just really gets you to look very carefully at what's there. So that's one of the advantages of copying. So that's one way you could use it. And once you start copying, you really start to see things like maybe the artist's brush strokes. How the composition is created. I'll take this one out of plastic because it's a little bit difficult to see. I really picked this one out at random, and this is a photocopy of a painting by Chardin, who's a French artist, I think 18th or 19th century, I'm not exactly sure. And he was famous for really these quite modest still lives, but very nicely, very beautifully constructed. Very carefully sort of balanced forms. So here you've got a really strong centre of interest. He's used light against dark to really draw your eye into that area. He's got almost like a kind of triangular composition with these three objects, but then it also comes out here and perhaps goes over to here. You've got very strong vertical elements and very strong horizontal elements. And then you've got other areas where, like this box, that is just subtle. It's quite a subtle difference from the background, but it is slightly different. So this is like the main actors of the scene. Then you've also got almost like a secondary still life here, and then another little one here. You've got this pipe that really leads your eye in, and then another one down the bottom that kind of leads your eye around. And so it's quite interesting to look at artist paintings. And you don't have to do a full painting, but even just a quick sketch really, and it just helps to sort of analyse, what are the design ideas that they're using. So that's the one I'll do a tiny bit in a minute. I brought in a collection of sketchbooks. These are, from the 1980s when I was at art school, and I remember this particular project. So this was one we did in the first year, and we were asked to kind of really analyse a painting by looking at it, drawing it, and we made little models and just try and analyse the space. So throughout this sketchbook, this was the painting that we took on, and it was like a couple of weeks project, sort of full-time project, and basically went to the National Gallery. This is in the National Gallery. Did sketches of it, which are, what got not all of this sketchbook, but some of them are the sketches in the, sketches from that painting. That would have been sort of like a design one. And then, as I say, we then made sort of models of it. So that's, and then looking at this sketch, I found a few others. So it was something that, we did quite a bit of, just going out to the gallery sketching.
Nice.
So that's, one approach you could take. So just talk about the resources and other ideas. So I'll demonstrate different ideas as we go on. I think I showed you this last week. I've got these folders here, which are sort of mostly these sheets with bits of information on the back, different artists' work. So there's all sorts of styles, modern styles, more kind of traditional styles. So you're welcome to use any of these. Plus things like sort of folk art, things like quilts and stuff like that. So all sorts of design ideas. You're welcome to borrow any of these. I got given these by one of my students who'd been an art teacher, so they must be like an educational resource. So they're a nice nice pack. I've got a few of those. Also brought a few books in on artist techniques. So I've got a couple of these books if you wanted to research a particular artist, there's quite a few different, and they go into the techniques that the artist used. And obviously they are all subtly different, you know, different artists have their different colour palettes and things like that. So I've got a few of those. What else I've got? There's resources. Yeah, I brought a couple of books in. So this is ideas that we could use as we go along. So I was thinking like an artist like Picasso, I think these two around. So as well as sort of straightforward copies, and I'll go into this in other weeks, but if you wanted to get to this. So this was, Picasso did a lot of these kind of paintings where he reinterpreted other artists' work. So this was Picasso's version of, books down. This is where, like, if you had a slideshow presentation, which is where I used to work in college, is good. Of this one, which was Manet's Déjeuner sur l'herbe, or something like that it's called. So it's like, you know, taking an older work and interpreting it in a more modern style, or your style, or something like that. So that's one idea. You could, another idea might be to sort of like make your own creation of a painting, but in a different style. So it might be that you pick something like maybe Van Gogh style, but try and paint, you know, a contemporary landscape in that style, just sort of changing colours, changing brush marks, things like that. So again, I'll demonstrate that another week. The other idea I had was like maybe finding things like artist drawings or combining different elements, because I know artists like Rubens used to have collections of other artists' drawings, and you used to be able to buy them, like you could go and buy a magazine or something. And then some of his paintings, he used some of like Leonardo's drawings and references from, because you would just use whatever's around. Like now we've got the internet, we've got magazines and things like that, and photographers. But then it would have been just drawings really. So it could be that, you know, you pick maybe a sort of interpretation of an artist's drawing, maybe turn it into a colour. So I thought that might be quite interesting, sort of going from black and white to colour, but you imagining the colours. So it's an opportunity to sort of be quite observant, but also perhaps quite creative really, and quite experimental. So that was, you know, some of the reasonings. It's quite a broad project if you fancy trying this one.
I think it sounds like it could last for longer than a month.
It could do, yeah, but equally you could just do, like, I mean, it could be like I just do a little detail and I'll leave it at that. You could just do little bits of copying or little bits of things. So don't feel like everything you have to do has to work into one. You know, it could be like studies, you know, either sketch studies or painted studies or experiments really. But yeah, it could equally, yeah, it could turn into, you know, something bigger if you wanted to. So I'll just do a tiny bit of this, but I just really wanted to kind of set it out really, what the options are, and if you've got ideas. So as I say, this would, you know, I haven't really looked up Chardin, how he particularly worked. So this was more of a general, but one thing about this is so far I've only used brown, blue and an earthy yellow, because it's all quite subdued colours really. It's very much a tonal painting, so that was one thing I thought about that. Yeah, somebody in the Tuesday group wanted to try out oils and hadn't tried out oils, so I just started this as really a demo just to get them started in oils. One approach that artists did used to use was really almost like a kind of tonal underpainting. So it's like the first layers, that paint isn't behaving itself, I don't know why. I'll use the blue, that's better.
What paint are you using?
This is water mixable oils, this is, yeah. So yeah, so the my paintings, I tend to use the traditional oils, but water mixables are quite good to use, the water mixables, don't you? And they're much easier to clean up and that sort of thing. So sometimes you can start a painting by just, you know, working almost like a tonal washing to start with, just to get your background tones. And also, a lot of people start with a white canvas, which is just really, really bright. So something like, I mean, I like to work from something that's slightly darker, like a mid-tone, but it's still quite light. So there's areas here that, I think the other thing with some of the masters was that paint was very expensive. So you had to make the paint, you physically had to grind it up and get the oil with it, mix the oil with it. So 2 thin coats was going to give you a lot better coverage than just, you know, thicker coats. And it's probably more in more kind of modern times when you could commercially buy oil paint and tubes, you could afford to use quite thick blobby marks really. But this would have been a more traditional way of working, thin layers, perhaps a tonal underpainting, what I think they call a grisaille. So you could, and like with oil paints, the blues and the browns dry a lot quicker than white does. So if you made it all quite transparent to start with, like that, and then we could have that little bit of shadow there. That could be quite dark, and actually the background's quite dark there. So once you've got your background, you can then build in layers of glazes. So it's basically thin paint with perhaps a little bit of oil mixed with it, or a bit of varnish as well. And then you build up a couple of layers of glaze. You can get a nice sort of kind of glowing, transparent look to the paint there, which is quite an old-fashioned, you know, old masters technique, something that I rather like. I like areas of transparency. So it's something I occasionally use in my work. Whereas the Impressionist would have just literally kind of gone straight out the tube, mixed with white and pop on there. So there's different approaches you could experiment with. Is that enough for that way?
Yeah.
But yeah, I just really wanted to just sort of set out what we could do, options really today.
I'm really surprised at, you know, them copying each other. I mean, plagiarism didn't.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was sort of. I don't think there weren't copyright laws there.
I know, it's amazing, really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can you actually spot it? You know, when you
I don't know if you can, but I remember seeing or hearing somewhere about Rubens having this collection of, you know, just a collection of drawings that he'd used, and that you probably could do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd have to look into it, but yeah, it was. Yeah, that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of maybe taking something like a Da Vinci drawing and then maybe doing my version of it or something like that.
Yeah.
Because a painting would be very different because you've got the colours, but if you've got a drawing to start with, you could just imagine, you know, just do your own. You know, you've got more scope to just play with it.
Or Vermeer. Or Vermeer.
Or for me, yeah, they're lovely, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah, and it also gets just focusing on the old masters, the modern masters, and just really spend a bit of time with them, really. And sometimes it's easy to just go on to whatever's contemporary, which I do a lot of now, but I know I'm really pleased that I did have that education where we were given art history lectures and we were encouraged to go and look at the galleries and spend a bit of time with them, really. Because that's, you know, it's like going with the quality, really. And obviously, like not obviously, but different people have come to light at different times. And I think like you mentioned Vermeer, I mean, he was almost like a forgotten artist for many hundreds of years, and then I think probably in the last couple of 100 years, he came to light more. But some artists...
many pictures.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't make many. He died fairly young, and he was very slow producing, really. Yeah. So where someone like Rubens, he had like a whole studio full of other people painting and with him, and he perhaps did the face, but the rest. So it's more like a kind of film company, you know, like film production, really. So different artists work different ways.
Amazing. Franz Hal is another one.
Yeah.
Stuff is in the Wallace collection.
Yeah. The other thing you could look at is like photographic techniques, and that's where I could attain it, and using like someone like Vermeer. I think there's a lot of evidence that he used optical devices like lenses, camera. Things like what do you call it?
Camera
Camera
obscura.
obscura. Yeah, there's camera obscuras. So basically, there's a lot of evidence that Vermeer used camera obscuras, and certain bits look slightly out of focus and things like that, like you would get with a camera. And there were portable camera obscuras that I think someone like Canaletto, you know, went and did his Venice paintings and things like that. The other thing is like, and before camera obscuras, they used mirrors, projected with mirrors. Again, when I used to teach courses at the college, I did the whole course just on these sort of optical things. But you can if you've got a darkened room and is it concave mirror?
Yeah.
You can focus, so you've got like a little hole for the light to come in, then you can focus it onto something else. So I tried that, and that is doable. Hard to set up, but there's all sorts of techniques that.
Tracing with a bit of paper would be much easier.
Yeah, but you've got to have something to trace in the first place. It's getting that image in the first place, which is in a sense what they were doing. They're tracing it, they're focusing it, and then tracing it down. So yeah, there's all sorts of areas you could investigate.
Fascinating.
Right, okay, let's
Okay. So what